Tribal Chairman Mutsun, thank you so much for being here, sharing your thoughts. Good evening, I'm Steve Pleich. I'll be your host for this edition again of Voices from the Village, and good evening again. As you know, Voices is the longest running issues-oriented community television production. We've been here for 17 years, really addressing a lot of very important issues that impact not only our county locally, but our region. And this evening we'll be talking about something that not only has local impact, but also a regional impact. You may hear my laryngitis a little bit, but fortunately you're not going to have to listen to much of my voice tonight, because I have an esteemed panel with me this evening whose voices you will want to listen to as we talk about the Juristac. With me is Valentin Lopez, who's the chair of the AMAmouton Tribal Band, and it goes by Val. So Val, welcome.
Mm-hmm.
We have Alice Kaufman, committee for the Green Foothills.
Yes.
I did that wrong to begin with, and then now I've got it. Committee for Green Foothills. Welcome, Alice.
Thank you.
And Dr. Stuart Weiss, conservation ecologist. Stuart, welcome. As we start, I really want to give people a sense and a flavor of what we're talking about, and I was struck by something that Val said in the literature that I was given by Tony Bauer. Thank you, Tony, for providing all of that information for us. And let me see. Chairman Lopez says, Juristac is a pristine state in relation to the surrounding region. When you look at our other ceremonial sites and our hunting, fishing, and gathering places, the vast majority of these places have been lost to development. Juristac is one of the very last remaining undisturbed areas. Our AMAmouton Tribe maintains that once disturbed by mining, there will be no way to rehabilitate the cultural and spiritual aspects of the landscape. I think that's beautifully said, and it really frames the issue for us.
Mm-hmm.
Val, why don't you tell our viewers something about yourself, and really not only your connection to the tribe, but also to the land.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. My name again is Valentin Lopez, and I'm the chairman of the AMAmouton Tribal Band. Our tribe is comprised of the descendants of those that were taken to Mission San Juan Bautista and Mission Santa Cruz. Our people have lived on these lands for 12, 14, 15,000 years. And if you think of that in terms of generations, that's 800, 900, perhaps 1,000 generations or more.
Wow.
How long our people have been here. The central coast of California was the most populated of indigenous people north of Mexico City at first contact. This had the heaviest population. And it's easy to understand why, because the resources are so plentiful, the rivers, the lakes, the ocean, the plants, the mild climate. It was just really a spectacular place to for our ancestors who lived there. And we know that we were truly blessed by Creator for choosing us to take care of that. Our creation story tells us that that the AMAmouton have the responsibility to take care of Mother Earth and all living things. And with that directive, our people took care of learned how to take care of the environment in a very sustainable way. They learned how to take care of the plants. So they provided for a full community. They learned how to use fire. They learned how to use coastal resources to keep them plentiful. Whenever we had the responsibility to take care of Mother Earth and all living things, we had the responsibility to make sure that the bears, for example, who did not migrate in our who did not hibernate in our territory.
Oh, is that right?
But because of the mild climate, they didn't need to. But then that also meant that they needed the food resources, through all 4 seasons. And so our people had to, work and learn how to, what foods could sustain them during those winter months, for example, and such. Our people knew, first and foremost, that the most important part of taking care of Mother Earth was maintaining its spirituality. And for that reason, they developed prayers and ceremonies, etc. Our most important place for ceremony, our most sacred site, is Juristac. And Juristac is at the very bottom end of the Santa Cruz Mountains. And it is also an important corridor for passage to the Gabilan Mountains or east to the Diablo Range Mountains. So it's a very important part there. But our people had the most important ceremonies there. The Juristac translates to the place of the big head. And the big head dance are the most important ceremonies, not only for the AMAmouton, but for many California tribes. And it was also the home of our spiritual leader. So that's a little bit of background about Juristac and why it is so important to us. Unfortunately, in the latter part of 2017, a proposal was submitted to Santa Clara County to develop a sand and gravel mining operation right there that would run for 30 years and would destroy four sacred mountains at Juristac, and it would just put a big pit in the ground.
But we'll get to that as we get a little further along. But thank you for really kind of framing beautifully, in fact, the importance of this particular space on the earth. Alice Kaufman, Committee for Green Foothills. Alice, welcome. Tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and your connection with Juristac and AMAmouton.
Yeah, so my name is Alice Kaufman, and I am the Legislative Advocacy Director with Committee for Green Foothills. We're an organization, a nonprofit organization that works to protect open space and natural resources in San Mateo and Santa Clara counties. And so our connection with Juristac is we work to protect all these hillsides that, as Val said, are almost pristine, and to protect the resources, the natural resources that are there, including the wildlife habitat and the wildlife migration corridors. So this is a very important issue, not only for its cultural and spiritual significance to the AMAmouton and to all of us, I believe, but also for its environmental impacts.
Wonderful. And last but certainly not least, Dr. Stuart Weiss. Stuart, welcome, conservation ecologist. Tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and your connection really to Juristac and the ecological impact.
So I'm a conservation ecologist. I've worked all over the western United States, but really my home turf is the Bay Area. And I work with a lot of threatened and endangered species, but also looking at the broader landscape. Project we just finished up was the Bay Area Conservation Lands Network 2.0, which tried to just looking at all the protected open space and try to find those places that are essential to completing a network of protected lands for plants and wildlife that will have a chance of sustaining itself in an era of rapid environmental change. And a really important component of that is the connectivity of the landscape so that animals like puma and badger can move as freely as possible, given all the constraints that we've and all the barriers we've put in their way. And I think I'll talk a little bit more about that.
Okay. And you are, as you do this work, you're receiving some support from the state of California in trying to generate and sustain open spaces here?
It's a project of the Bay Area Open Space Council, which is a consortium of all of the government agencies, park districts, nonprofits, advocacy groups, and land trusts. That is really trying to take a look at the entirety of the Bay Area and be able to put any one place in a broader context, because the connectivity and continuous nature of the landscape is absolutely essential to conserving biodiversity. Species need room to move, especially in an era of rapid climate change.
Well, wonderful, thank you. And I'll remind our viewers, this is a live call-in program, 425-8848, extension 630. So if you have a question for our panelists, please call, and I'm certain they can give you an informed and knowledgeable and passionate answer to that. So Val, you're talking about this 2017, they're coming in with this proposal for sand and gravel. Did that catch you all by surprise? Were you prepared for this? Was there some idea that there was going to be some development of your sacred grounds, or?
Well, probably a year or so before that, Sergeant Ranch went into bankruptcy, and so we knew that there was going to be a new owner of Sergeant Ranch, and we were really worried about someone wanting to come on in and just develop it somehow. We had no idea it was going to be a sand and gravel mining operation, but we knew that they were going to come on in and look to monetize it. And so we knew we were going to have to, step up and work hard to protect and conserve Juristac. And so once they submitted the proposal, we were notified of it, and we immediately contacted the county and requested consultation with it. So we've been in the consultation process with the county for quite a while now, and such. So that's how we became aware of it.
This is the county of Santa Clara?
Yes, Santa Clara County.
Right. And how is your relationship with them, with those kind of bureaucrats who sometimes quite don't understand the necessity and the beauty and the sacred aspect of land?
You're absolutely right. There's policies and regulations and a general plan. It lays out what can and cannot be done there, and that's what they base their decisions on. But whenever we talk about it being sacred and spiritual lands, there's nothing in the regulations that addresses, the protection of sacred lands.
Right.
And such. So we have a real uphill fight here. We have a really tough fight here. And to get the county to recognize sacredness when they're supposed to not consider, they look at this as bringing religion into their decision making, and they're not supposed to do that. So it does make it hard. The other thing is that, our Native American spirituality has never been appreciated, understood, respected, or valued, and stuff like that. So many of our sites have been destroyed already, and so so they just don't look at it as being important, I'm afraid.
And Alice, how does the Committee for Green Foothills, what's their part in facing this challenge, in helping maintain and preserve these the tribal spiritual sacramental lands?
Right. Our work as legislative advocacy director, my work with Committee for Green Foothills focuses on basically helping agencies like the County of Santa Clara to make the decisions that are environmentally responsible. And in this case, as we're working with the tribe and with Chairman Lopez, we're also asking them to prioritize, to make decisions that are spiritually responsible and culturally responsible. Right. And as Val says, it's not in the regulations to say, you must respect Native American culture and Native American spirituality. But we believe that it's so important now that the impacts that this sand mining operation would have on both the ecological and the cultural significance of the site, the impacts are so severe that it is the responsibility of the county to take that into account and to deny the project.
And Stuart, you can speak to the environmental impact and the danger that this really represents.
Right. So in the bigger picture, I think it's really important to acknowledge that the the quote natural legacy we've been inherited in California really is the responsibility of Val's ancestors for hundreds of generations tending the land. And we've done a really good job of ripping it apart in a lot of ways. So when we look at the region in terms of where wildlife has a chance to get in and out of the Santa Cruz Mountains, the Santa Cruz Mountains are largely an island now. There's just a few tenuous connections to the Diablo Range and to the Gabilan Range. And recently, one of those tenuous connections at Coyote Valley in South San Jose was protected. Still a lot of work to maintain, to enhance the connectivity in there, but at least it's not going to get developed. And the other big area really is Juristac. It's kind of like all roads lead through Juristac.
Right.
That's how animals can get into the Pajaro River corridor. That's how they can get south towards through the Chittenden Gap. So for animals like the puma and the badger, it's really, really important that they have genetic exchange in and out of the Santa Cruz Mountains. Some recent research has shown that the puma population, the mountain lions, are very inbred and at really great risk. The local population has even been proposed for listing under the California Endangered Species Act because of the genetic isolation. You know, we all know inbreeding is just, you know, that doesn't work for very long.
Right. Of course.
So the maintaining that connectivity, there's like the 101 bridge over the Pajaro River, which is like a wildlife highway going perpendicular to our highway. And when you look at the plans for Juristac, it's almost like putting up a fence that will really, you know, restrict the movements of wildlife in and out of the area. Putting a large industrial complex like a sand mine in the middle of a already tenuous wildlife corridor is not a good idea if we're actually serious about maintaining the connectivity of the landscape.
Yeah, please continue.
Yeah, so one other impact is the Sargent Creek watershed. There's this the watershed that's going to bear the brunt of this sand mine if it goes in.
Let me see if we have a call. We have a call here. We have a question for one of our panelists.
Yes, first of all, I want to say it's a great show to address these issues.
Oh, thank you.
Facing us right now. And I'm worried about habitat destruction. Basically, where they're building all the new houses and they're going up into the hills more and more, they're displacing all kinds of animals. And I'll take my answer off air.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Alice? Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As the caller says, this is a very great issue. It's a very great concern that we all have. The patterns that the historic patterns of development, of pushing out into our open space areas, of going up into the hills, are very destructive not only to habitat, but they're not good for us as a society, and it's not good for the environment as a whole. We've seen with wildfire issues what can happen when we have too many homes out in the wildland-urban interface. And it's also a climate change issue, because when people live farther out from the places that they have to commute to, like their work and their schools, then they're putting more greenhouse gases into the air. So, you know, the environmentally smart thing to do is not to develop in the open space areas, but to keep our future growth in our infill areas. Now, the proposal for Juristac isn't a question of housing; it's a question of an industrial sand mining operation. But still, the impact on terms of destruction of open space, destroying our carbon absorbing potential of the open space areas is really significant, no matter whether you dig it up or put homes on it.
Yeah, so going a little further back in the history of Sargent Ranch, groups like the Committee for Green Foothills fought off a massive housing golf course proposal there. I forget what a couple of decades ago, or
Really?
2001?
yeah, about a decade ago.
Wow.
Like 5,000 plus homes and golf courses, and so it's been temporarily saved once, and that was what triggered the bankruptcy of the development company, and then it went into the receivership. So, the conservation of open spaces and wildlife habitat in general is a regional cultural value in the Bay Area. I talk to people in other regions doing conservation work, and I get accused of being in this Bay Area bubble. And I turn it back on them and I say, no, we're a beacon.
There you go.
We're trying to conserve
That's
at
right.
least half the
That's right.
landscape
Yeah.
by 2050 in formal open space protection. And that's really what it takes to conserve biodiversity.
Yeah, and I know there's the ecological impact and the importance of that, but also I think what interests me and as an individual is more respect for tribal and sacramental lands. And we had something here in Santa Cruz, you may recall, when they were building housing development on some Ohlone Native American burial grounds. And Danny Sheehan, if you know Danny, of course, does wonderful work, led the charge to make sure that was preserved, that was honored. And they did come to an accommodation with that here in Santa Cruz. So I think there's more awareness of that. And so when people talk about Juristac and Mutsun, it's not something they say, well, what's this about? I think they say, I want to know more. Yeah.
Well, our Native Americans, especially here in California, have been and being federally unrecognized. We are a federally unrecognized tribe. We've been forgotten and ignored and erased from history. Just 15, 20 years ago, no one knew that there were even Native Americans from this area still here.
Yeah.
And so we lived underground throughout the 1900s. We would not. When I was growing up, my mom, every time I would leave the house, my mom and my grandmothers, they would always say, remember, always say you're Mexican, never say you're Indian. Because it wasn't safe. Because of the laws here in California, those early laws, they allowed bounty hunting for Indians. They paid military excursions to go out and hunt down Indians and to kill them. Here in Santa Cruz in 1873, the Santa Cruz Sentinel published an article that said that they will no longer pay bounty money for California Indian scalps. And that's right here on the lands that we're on today.
Yeah.
And so our great-grandparents, they lived through that, so they pass it on to their children. Don't say you're Indian, say you're Mexican.
Right.
And that got passed on through my generation and such, So, but in the year 2003, the elders asked me to run for chair, and I ran for chair, and then they said we have to start presenting ourselves to the public and let them know who we are, that we're still here. Because a lot of people were trying to present themselves as AMAmouton, and we didn't know who they were, and what they were saying about our culture and stuff wasn't correct. And so we said, no, we need to start speaking up ourselves.
Right.
And then in 2006, they said we needed to start speaking up for our lands. And we needed to start fulfilling our obligation to Creator, to take care of Mother Earth. And so, from 2006 to the present, we've been fighting very hard to preserve and protect our cultural sites, to restore the indigenous knowledge of our ancestors, to educate our members and educate the public about who we are, and to and to honor our ancestors and fulfill our obligation to Creator.
Yeah.
And so we've been working hard since that time.
I really do find that fascinating. It's part of my living in Santa Cruz County and having lived in Santa Clara County, is that the appreciation for indigenous peoples and their rights and the things that they were here that have somehow been forgotten or pushed aside. And the more I hear about it, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it, and we're certainly here to talk about the Santa Gravel Pit and protecting Juristac, and that's extremely important in the larger picture, I think. If there's something to be said for awareness of indigenous peoples as a people and as the rights, and to go beyond the biases and go beyond the prejudices and go beyond, you know, the seeming disregard of their part in history of California, which is extremely rich.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And a lot, you know, and there's a lot of stories out there that are not true. I mean, in so many ways, people think of us as just being unsophisticated hunters and gatherers. You know, we just randomly looked for food and we found something and got lucky. You know? And they're finding out that that's not true at all.
Yeah.
Our people, that, you know, they really did manage the food and the food and the medicine and the basketry and the other, you know, and the other crafting materials in a very sustainable way. And as a matter of fact, we're doing a lot of work now with UC Santa Cruz, UC Berkeley and Stanford and other universities and stuff like that. And they're finding out that the way that our people took care of the land and stuff like that is going to be critical if we're going to be if we're going to address issues related to climate change. You know, I mean, the way we took care of the plants, our grasslands took you know would develop root systems that went down 15, 20 feet deep, and that makes them much more resistant to flooding, to fire, to drought, etc.
So I want to make sure that we give people an opportunity who are watching this that are concerned about and interested about preserving and really honoring indigenous peoples' rights and lands, how they can engage in this. And so give us a couple of ideas about what they can do so we can tell our folks, and they'll have runners underneath on the TV to let us know.
Okay. You want to do that?
Oh, sure. So, you know, we have a really broad coalition of local residents and organizations and community leaders who have come together to stand with the AMAmouton in defense of Juristac and in opposition to the quarry. And where the process is at right now is the County of Santa Clara has been working on their draft environmental impact report for some time now, and they've been telling us that they're going to be releasing that pretty soon. And when they do, so they release the draft, it's called the EIR, the draft EIR. When that is released, then the public has an opportunity to comment. And the public can do that by sending in written comments to the county, and they will provide an email address that you can send that to, or you can also, they'll be having a public hearing where people can come.
We are going to interrupt our speaker for just a moment, and then we'll be right back. And then you can